Good Friday morning. Thanks so much for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Michelle Beck. Let's get to your headlines. Happening right now, investigators are just starting to pick through debris after a massive fire destroyed several buildings at the Renaissance Festival grounds in Shakopee. The area is very difficult to get water supply into. It's why 12 different departments responded to help put out the flames. Audrey Russo has been on scene all morning long, and she is here with the latest.
Earlier this morning, we still saw one spot of the rubble smoldering, even after 12 fire departments spent 2 hours here last night trying to extinguish the fire at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival. The investigation is now in the hands of the state fire marshal, but Shakopee fire officials tell us that it was a lack of water on the property that made it difficult to put the fire out. This is a look from Sky 11 last night. The fire broke out around 6 and was mostly extinguished by 8. You can see our cameras captured the last of the hot spots getting sprayed down. No one was injured. Part of the investigation, no doubt, will be revisiting this fire. This is from 2011, where a lack of water was also cited by Shakopee fire officials. Now, we reached out to the Ren Fair in the last few hours for a better idea of how much damage was done. If you've been to the Renaissance Festival before, you know all of the buildings are made out of wood. It appears as though the fire was contained to one section of the property, and at least one vendor posted on social media that their booth was affected. Now, the Renaissance Fair wasn't supposed to start for another 4 months, but this is a fair that 300,000 people visit annually, according to the stats on their website. So whether or not this fire will delay the opening is a question that organizers will have to answer in the weeks ahead. Back to you. As firefighters work to put out that fire, the steeple of a St. Paul church was also up in flames. Here's a look at the damage as the sun came up this morning. Due to unstable conditions, the Department of Safety and Inspection is blocking off the sidewalks and the street. But let's show you what it looked like before firefighters put out the flames. You can see here in this video the orange blaze shooting up the steeple as some rain falls. Officials suspect a lightning strike started the fire. They also tell us the church hasn't been used for worship and nobody was hurt. The St. Paul Fire Chief says the Red Cross is helping 2 people who are living in that church. This morning, a makeshift memorial has popped up on the Florida State University in Tallahassee after a lone gunman opened fire, killing 2 people and injuring several others on campus. Right now, investigators say the alleged gunman is a student at FSU and the son of a sheriff's deputy. He is currently in the hospital. We know the 2 men killed are not students at the university, and everybody hurt is in stable condition. This morning, students are sharing what they saw and what they heard.
So we immediately did as we were taught to do in high school. We turned off the lights, locked the doors, barricaded under our desks.
I think it's just very sad that he would do that to a school, let alone do that to his mom, knowing that that's her job and what she works for is to keep people, especially students, safe.
A service weapon. It was among 3 guns found on scene. Luigi Mangione was indicted on 4 federal charges in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York. That indictment coming down ahead of today's deadline for prosecutors to either file one or seek a delay. The indictment includes a federal murder charge, which opens the door for the death penalty. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi said the Justice Department will seek that. Mangione also faces state murder charges in New York. The state case is expected to go to trial first. It's not clear right now when he will be brought to federal court in Manhattan for an arraignment. New this morning, the U.S. and Ukraine are moving ahead with their deal on rare earth minerals. Yesterday, they signed a memorandum of intent. That means they are one step closer to the full agreement. Meanwhile, still being worked on across Europe is a ceasefire deal between Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine signed on to stop the fighting back in February. Russian President Vladimir Putin has not agreed to anything. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says it may be time to explore other options for peace.
But we need to figure out here now within a matter of days whether this is doable in the short term, because if it's not, then I think we're just going to move on from our perspective. The president feels very strongly about that. He has dedicated a lot of time and energy to this, and there are a lot of things going on in the world right now that we need to be focused on. So this is important, but there are a lot of other really important things going on that deserve just as much, if not more, attention.
New this morning, the U.S. is planning to impose new port fees on Chinese ships. The fees will be charged on all Chinese-built and owned ships docking in U.S. ports, with amounts based on net weight or goods carried on board. They'll begin in about 6 months and will be rolled out in phases. China says the plan will fail and that it'll raise global shipping costs, plus inflation pressures harming American consumers and businesses. More allies are coming to meet with President Trump in search of a deal in the weeks before sweeping tariffs begin on trading partners around the world. The president once again threatened to fire the Federal Reserve chair who warned tariffs could hurt the economy. And as a Democratic senator secured a meeting with a migrant who was mistakenly deported to a prison in El Salvador, President Trump appears to be washing his hands of the matter. NBC's Alice Barr has more from Washington.
Hi there. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife voiced relief that her deported husband is alive as a Reagan-appointed appeals judge reasserted his right to due process. And the White House accused Democrats of siding with someone they're describing as a terrorist gang member.
This morning, President Trump's economic and immigration policy both making waves, with the first images of Kilmar Abrego Garcia since his deportation to a notorious prison in El Salvador through what the Trump administration called an administrative error. Meeting here with Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who traveled to press for his release.
Kilmar has his due process rights.
The White House interpreting a Supreme Court order to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to mean that El Salvador would have to initiate the release. That country's president writing, quote, "Now that he's been confirmed healthy, he gets the honor of staying in El Salvador's custody." The Trump administration says Abrego Garcia is part of the violent MS-13 gang, citing Maryland police reports based on an informant who his attorneys and family refute. He has no criminal convictions. President Trump appearing to step back from the issue.
Well, I'm not involved in it. I'm going to respond by saying you'll have to speak to the lawyers.
As he stepped up his sharp criticism of Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, who he's repeatedly urged to lower interest rates.
I don't think he's doing the job. If I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me.
That following these comments on Wednesday.
Tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation.
The Federal Reserve is designed to act independently to avoid political pressure, and Chairman Powell, who President Trump once appointed, has said he doesn't have the authority to fire him. The clock now ticking to a new round of tariffs as the president works toward trade deals with world leaders.
The Supreme Court agreed to take up another high-profile case next month on President Trump's executive order aimed at restricting the constitutionally protected right to birthright citizenship. He wants it to only apply if at least one parent is a citizen. The High Court allowed a nationwide hold on that policy to stay in place. In Washington, I'm Alice Barr. Back to you.
The long-awaited resentencing hearing for brothers Eric and Lyle Menendez has been delayed till next month. The two-day hearing was expected to begin on Thursday. Instead, the prosecutors and defense are fighting over risk assessments conducted by a parole board. The reports were part of a separate clemency investigation. The defense arguing those assessments should be kept out of the hearing, but prosecutors argue the reports were an essential piece of the puzzle. The judge called for a recess to get clarification from state officials, and the hearing was postponed for May 9th. The brothers are currently serving life in prison without a chance for parole in the 1989 murders of their parents. If the judge grants them a revised sentence, a parole board will review their case and could recommend them for release. The Wild are in action this weekend in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Their first game is this Sunday against the Golden Knights. Minnesota hoping for better fortunes in the season series where Vegas took all 3 games. But now they're getting back to a healthy roster after facing a serious injury bug for the majority of the year.
Good morning, I'm Julia Daniels. The Wild are headed out west for the first round of the NHL playoffs to play the Vegas Golden Knights. Puck drop for Game 1 in Vegas is set for 8 p.m. this Sunday. Game 2, get ready for this and chug some late afternoon caffeine because Tuesday it's a 10 p.m. puck drop. Thursday, they're back at the X for an 8 p.m. game. Game 4 is also at the X, a matinee puck drop on Saturday at 3 p.m. And depending on how the first 4 pan out, we'll find out more about games 5 and 6. However, we do know game 5 is scheduled for Tuesday, April 29th in Vegas. Game 6 is scheduled for Thursday, May 1st at the X. And should they need a game 7, it's set for Saturday, May 3rd in Vegas. We will have boots on the ground for game 1 on Sunday. Will Hall will be traveling for the Wolves series in LA and then heading to Vegas for that game 1 matchup. So be on the lookout for that this weekend.
And stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.